I've worn the badge for over 20 years. I've handled drug raids gone sideways, domestic calls that turned deadly, and manhunts that ended with blood on my boots. But not a single damn thing has ever haunted me like what happened in Hollow Creek. It's the one case we don't talk about. The one we never reopened. The one that still keeps me up at night. It started on a gray October morning back in 2014. Hollow Creek is a speck on the map, a forested stretch of backcountry in western Pennsylvania. Population under 300. People mind their business out there, most of them living off-grid, and 911 calls are rare. So when we got 2 missing persons reports from the same area in a single week, it raised eyebrows. The first was a teenage boy, 17, named Tyler McCormick. His mother reported him missing after he didn't come home from a late-night hike with friends. They swore he split off around midnight, saying he'd catch up later, but he never did. Search and rescue combed the woods, but aside from a dropped flashlight and a torn hoodie snagged on a branch, there was nothing. The second was a postal worker named Daniel Hayes. His truck was found idling on a gravel road a few miles into the woods. Driver's door open, mail still stacked in the back. No sign of him. No tracks, no struggle. It was like he just walked into the trees and vanished. Sheriff Givens, my boss, didn't like coincidences. He pulled me and 2 other deputies, Carter and Ruiz, and told us to make Hollow Creek our full-time priority. We set up a base camp near the trailhead and started canvassing. Locals had stories, of course. Strange lights in the woods, whispers after dark, the usual backwoods folklore. We dismissed most of it as paranoia until we started finding the symbols. About a mile in, nailed to an old oak, was a wooden disc carved with a crude spiral pattern. Another one turned up deeper along the creek bed, and another one tied to a tree limb near a dry ravine. Always the same spiral, always facing west. They're markers, Ruiz muttered, running his hand over one. For what, though? We didn't know. But the deeper we searched, the more uneasy we felt. Radios crackled with static even when we were close together. Compasses spun uselessly. More than once I swore I saw movement just beyond the tree line, shapes slipping between the shadows. But whenever I turned, they were gone. On the 4th day, we found something we couldn't explain. It was an old cellar door half buried under moss and leaves, hidden behind a thicket of brambles. It didn't appear on any map. Carter pried it open with a crowbar, revealing a set of rotting wooden stairs leading down into darkness. The smell hit us immediately. Damp earth, mold, and something else. Something metallic and sharp like blood. We radioed it in, but before backup could arrive, Carter insisted on a quick look. Just a peek, he said. Make sure there's no one trapped down there. We descended with flashlights drawn, beams cutting through thick cobwebs and dust motes. The stairs opened into a small stone chamber, old and maybe 19th century, with brick walls slick with moisture. In the center was a wooden table covered with objects I still see when I close my eyes. Dozens of animal bones, arranged in precise geometric patterns. Rusted lantern filled with something that looked like congealed blood, and a torn piece of fabric, a blue denim, identical to the jeans Tyler McCormick had been wearing the night he vanished. Carter cursed under his breath. What the hell is this? We should have left then. We should have sealed the place off and waited for forensics. But Ruiz noticed something in the far wall, a narrow passage leading deeper underground. And before I could stop him, he was already ducking inside. The tunnel twisted and sloped downward, walls closing in until we were walking single file. The air grew colder, heavier. Our lights flickered. Then abruptly, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. There were dozens of those spiral carvings etched into the stone walls, but it was what stood in the center that turned my stomach. A massive wooden structure, part altar, part scaffold, assembled from tree limbs and bones lashed together with rope. At its base were personal items, wallets, shoes, a mailbag, a child's backpack, all weathered with age, all belonging to people who'd gone missing, and scattered around the altar were human remains. Not just bones, but fragments of clothing, bits of skin, scraps of hair, teeth embedded into the stone floor like they'd been hammered there. Ruiz gagged and stumbled back. Carter swore, crossing himself. I forced myself closer, my heart hammering. Something about the construction felt intentional, ritualistic. But who built it? And where were they now? That's when the whispering started. At first I thought it was the wind, a low susurrus snaking through the tunnels. But it grew louder, layered, like dozens of voices murmuring in a language I didn't recognize. Carter swung his light wildly. "Who's there?" Silence, then Ruiz's flashlight died, then Carter's and then mine. We were plunged into pitch darkness. The whispering turned into laughter, cold, distant, echoing off the stone. I felt something brush past my leg. Carter shouted, then cut off mid-cry. I swung blindly, my hand hitting only empty air. When the lights flickered back on, Carter was gone. His radio lay on the ground, still hissing static. But no footprints. No drag marks, nothing. We bolted. Ruiz and I sprinted back through the tunnel, gasping, stumbling, not daring to look behind us. We burst out of the cellar and into daylight, slamming the hatch shut and calling for backup. Search teams scoured the tunnels for 2 days. They found the altar. They found the bones. But they never found Carter. An official report said he was presumed dead, likely lost in a cave collapse. But Ruiz and I knew better. We both heard the laughter. We both felt the hands. And we both swore we saw shapes and human shapes, watching us from deep in the chamber before the lights failed. The site was sealed off by state authorities a week later. Classified, they said. No further investigation. 2 weeks after that, Ruiz turned in his badge. Said he was done. He moved to Arizona, changed his name, never looked back. Me? I stayed, someone had to. But I haven't set foot near Hollow Creek since. Every year, on the anniversary of that day, I get a call from a blocked number. I never answer, but I always check the voicemail. It's the same thing every time, static. And then just before the line goes dead, Carter's voice whispering my name. I've answered thousands of calls in my career. Assaults, overdoses, panicked parents, you name it. But there's one I'll never forget. One that still wakes me in the dead of night, sweating and shaking, reaching for the radio that isn't there. It was a cold January evening in 2017. I'd just started my overnight shift at the 911 dispatch center in Allegheny County. Midnight to 8 a.m., the graveyard shift. Most nights were quiet aside from the occasional domestic dispute or drunk driver. But just after 2:13 a.m., line 17 lit up on my board, an unlisted number, no caller ID. 911, what's your emergency? I answered. The line was silent at first. Then I heard breathing, soft, shaky like someone hiding. Hello? I pressed. Can you speak? The voice that came through was barely above a whisper. He's in the house. My pulse jumped. Ma'am, what's your name? Emily. A pause. Please, help me. He's coming. Standard protocol kicked in. Emily, are you somewhere safe? Can you lock a door? Can you tell me your address? There was a long silence. Then almost like she was reading it from memory. 942 Belmont Avenue. I typed it into my terminal. But nothing came up. No Belmont Avenue in the county. No address even close. Emily, I said carefully, can you describe your house? Landmarks? Cross streets? He's upstairs now, she whispered. I can hear him walking. He's calling my name. I flagged the call as an active home invasion and patched it to patrol. 2 units rolled out anyway, sweeping nearby streets in case she'd given the wrong name. Meanwhile, I stayed on the line trying to keep her talking. What does he look like? I don't know, she said. He wears a mask. He only comes at night. The hair on my neck stood up. Has this happened before? Another pause. Every night, the line went dead. I called back immediately. No answer. The number traced to nothing. Unregistered, likely a burner. The patrol units came back empty. No break-ins, no suspicious vehicles, no Emily. We logged it as a prank and moved on. But the next night, at 2:13 a.m., line 17 rang again. Melman, what's your emergency? It's Emily, the voice said. Same breathless whisper. Same terror. He's closer tonight, I swallowed. Emily, listen to me. I need more details. Are there any signs outside? What city are you in? I can see his shadow, she said. It's on the wall. It's too tall. Too wrong. The call dropped. This time I stayed late digging into records. No missing persons named Emily. No reports from anything resembling Belmont Avenue. I even tried reversing the phone number through our systems. Nothing. It was like the call didn't exist. For the next 7 nights, the calls continued. Always at 2:13, always from Emily, and always the same story, the masked man, the footsteps, the shadow. Each time he got closer, his hand is on the doorknob, He's whispering through the vents. He knows I'm calling you. I started dreading the clock ticking toward 14. I'd stare at line 17, knowing it would light up. My coworkers teased me and said I was getting too into it. But I knew this wasn't a prank. The fear in her voice was too real. On the 8th night, I tried a different approach. Emily, I said, I believe you, but I need something to go on. Can you look outside? Tell me what you see. Silence. Then snow. Good, anything else? Streetlight. Mailbox. Her breathing quickened. Wait, there's a man! He's standing in the snow, looking up at me. Stay calm, I said, already typing. What's behind him? Houses, woods, gravestones. That stopped me cold. Did you say gravestones? But the line had already gone dead. That night I went off script. After my shift, I drove the back roads near the county line, searching for anything resembling a Bellman Avenue. At around 4 a.m., I found a narrow dirt road with a broken sign, Belmont Lane. It led to an overgrown cemetery, small, forgotten, the kind of place the city stopped maintaining decades ago. Most of the headstones were broken or illegible, but in the far corner near a gnarled oak tree, I saw a mailbox, rusted, faded. Number 942. I stood there in the falling snow, heart pounding, staring at a mailbox that hadn't seen mail in 50 years. And as I did, I felt something, a prickle on the back of my neck, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. I turned. No one was there. The calls continued for another week. Each night the man drew closer. Each night Emily's voice grew more desperate. On the 15th night, she said 5 words that still haunt me. He's standing right behind me. The line went dead. That was the last call we ever received from Emily. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks later, a property developer contacted the city about clearing the old Belmont Cemetery for a new subdivision. During the preliminary dig, they found something beneath the frozen soil. A small, rotted wooden staircase leading down into what used to be a root cellar. Inside were human remains, dozens of them. Most were centuries old, but one skeleton was different. Newer, modern clothing still clinging to the bones. Dental records identified her as Emily Carter, age 28, reported missing in 1989. She'd been dead for almost 30 years. We reopened the investigation, combing through the call logs. Every trace of line 17 had vanished. No timestamps, no recordings, nothing. Even the server showed blank space where those calls should have been. I asked our tech guys if that was possible. They said no. You can't just delete a call from our system, one of them said. It's like deleting time. The case was officially closed in 2018. No viable leads, they wrote. Caller identity unconfirmed. But sometimes on night shifts, I still stare at line 17, and every so often, maybe once a year, it lights up. 1. What's your emergency? I ask, even though I already know the answer. He's in the house. I've spent nearly 20 years in law enforcement, and I've seen things I still wish I could scrub from my memory. Crime scenes so violent they hardly seemed human. People so broken they barely seemed alive. But nothing has ever left a scar on me quite like what happened in the spring of 2019. I was a sergeant with the Haverfield County Sheriff's Department, stationed at our main holding facility. Most of my nights were predictable, processing drunks, calming down domestic abusers, doing paperwork until dawn. I used to joke that the cells saw more bad breath than bad guys. Then came the night of April 11th. It started with a trespassing call. Nothing unusual. A man had been spotted wandering behind a closed hardware store downtown, muttering to himself and refusing to leave. When officers arrived, he didn't resist. He didn't run. He just stood there in the rain, soaked through, staring at them with empty eyes. He had no ID, no phone, nothing but the wet clothes on his back. When they asked his name, he said nothing. They brought him in for holding, assuming he was a vagrant. That's when my shift began. I was finishing intake on a DUI suspect when they brought the man through the Sally port. I looked up from my paperwork and felt my chest tighten. Something about him was wrong, not dangerous, not threatening, just wrong. He was pale, almost gray with deep hollows under his eyes. His clothes, a black button-up and brown slacks, looked like they belonged to another decade. And his smell? God, I'll never forget it. Not body odor, not booze. It was cold, damp, like wet soil left in a basement too long. "What's your name, sir?" I asked. He stared at me. No blink, no movement. Then softly, "Thomas." "Thomas what?" Silence. We booked him as John Doe and placed him in cell 4, the only empty one on the block. As the heavy door closed, he didn't look scared or angry. He just sat down on the bench, folded his hands, and stared at the far wall. A few hours passed. The DUI sobered up. A domestic assault suspect demanded water. Everything was routine, except for Thomas. He hadn't moved, not once. I checked the monitors every half hour, and every time he was sitting in the exact same position, eyes fixed on the same spot. At 3:17 a.m., I decided to check on him myself. When I approached the cell, he turned his head, the first movement I'd seen all night. "Do you need anything?" I asked. He studied me like he was deciding whether or not to speak. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't have brought me back," I blinked. "Back from where?" He tilted his head. "The ground." I laughed nervously, thinking he was just mentally unstable. "Okay, let's keep it calm tonight, all right?" But he wasn't smiling. He wasn't joking. His eyes, God, his eyes, and were hollow. "I was warm there," he whispered. "Peaceful." "And then you dug me up." I reported his behavior to our on-call psychiatrist, but since he wasn't violent, we had no reason to transfer him. I went back to my desk, trying to shake the chill his words left behind. At 4:05 a.m., the monitor for cell 4 went black. It was a cheap camera, so glitches happened, but protocol demanded we check it. I grabbed Officer Martinez and we walked back to the block. When we reached the cell, my stomach dropped. Thomas was gone. The door was still locked from the outside. The window was intact. No vents big enough to crawl through. No sign of tampering. He had just vanished. We did a full sweep of the facility. Nothing. Every exit camera showed no one leaving. It was like he'd evaporated. We were preparing the incident report when dispatch radioed in. A patrol unit responding to a welfare check 5 miles away had found a body in a shallow grave behind an abandoned farmhouse. The name on the ID? Thomas Everly. And here's the part that still makes me doubt my sanity. Thomas Everly had died in 1987. The coroner's report confirmed it. The bones were decades old. They matched the dental records from a missing persons case closed over 30 years ago. I thought it was a mistake. It had to be. But when they showed me the photo from the coroner's office, my blood went cold. It was him. The same man I'd booked into cell 4. The same face, the same clothes. Down to the last detail. I requested the booking footage from that night. I watched it again and again. And every time there he was, and silent, soaked, unblinking. I even watched the moment the camera feed went dark. When it came back online 2 minutes later, the cell was empty. No one believed us. Internal Affairs called it a clerical mix-up. They said we must have misidentified the suspect. But Martinez and I knew better. We'd spoken to him. We'd locked him inside that cell, and it wasn't over. 2 nights later, the grave where they found Thomas had been disturbed. Fresh dirt piled beside it, as if something had clawed its way out. The forensic team said it was likely an animal, maybe a coyote. But I've seen animal digs before. This was deliberate. Like something had pushed upward. I couldn't sleep. I started digging deeper into the original 1987 case. According to the file, Thomas had been a local carpenter who vanished one night on his way home from work. No suspects, no leads, just a missing person who was quietly forgotten. The strange part? His wife had reported him acting paranoid in the weeks before his disappearance. He told her he was being followed, that something was calling to him from the soil. I would have dismissed it as delusion if I hadn't heard what came next. 3 weeks after the incident, I was on night shift again. 2:44 a.m., I was finishing paperwork when Martinez called me over to the monitor bank. "Look at cell 4, he said. I leaned over his shoulder. The camera, which we hadn't used since the incident, was on. The feed was live, and there he was, Thomas, sitting on the bench, hands folded. Staring at the far wall, we froze. No alarms had gone off. No doors had opened, but the timestamp was real, the feed was real. I grabbed the keys and sprinted down the corridor. When I opened the cell door, it was empty. The bench was cold. The air smelled like wet earth. The camera feed cut to static. We shut down cell 4 after that. Officially, it was for renovations. Unofficially, no one wanted to be near it. New hires weren't told the story. Old-timers avoided talking about it. But strange things kept happening. Sometimes during night shifts, the lock on cell 4 would be found open, even though it hadn't been touched. Sometimes the faint smell of soil would drift through the corridor, fresh soil like something recently unearthed. And sometimes, not always, but often enough to make me dread the possibility, a voice would echo faintly from the empty cell. "You shouldn't have brought me back. I left the sheriff's department 2 years later." Officially, I said it was for family reasons. But the truth is, I couldn't stand walking past that cell anymore. The new sergeant called me last winter, said he needed to ask about something. "Did you ever get weird interference on the cameras?" he asked. "What kind?" I said. "Only cell 4. It flickers on and off every few nights. And last week," he paused. "Last week I swear I saw someone inside." My mouth went dry. "Did you open the door?" "No," he said. "I just stared at the monitor." And this man, pale, wet, wearing old clothes, looked straight at the camera. And then it went dark. I told him not to open the door. Ever. Sometimes I wonder if we really found Thomas at all, or if he was never meant to be unearthed. Maybe we disturbed something that wasn't supposed to return, and if that's the case, maybe cell 4 isn't empty at all. Maybe it's just waiting.